I'm unique. I'm sitting. I'm old. And I'm going to read because my memory isn't quite what it should have been. So please excuse that. I'm not quite clear why I have been chosen to speak on TED. Because I truly believe I cannot give to all of you, my poor captive audience, what wonderful ideas others on this program have given. However, when LACAS says do it, I do it. I'd like to tell you about who and what I am for the simple reason that I was born in 1926 and have lived through a vastly changing world, most importantly in its values. Since I am 85 years old, I can tell my students about Hitler's Germany during the 1936 Olympics, which my parents attended. And of course, all of World War II's events and battles reported by the radio and newspapers. As youngsters, inspired by ideas of winning freedom from the British Raj, we would be thrilled at the news of British reverses in African campaigns. Rommel was our hero, and like so many romantic teenagers of those days, so was Stalin. And I wrote in my diary, Stalingrad will never fall. It has his name. Alas, I now teach the history of the USSR and do not quite have the same opinion of Stalin. My students have made me a time capsule, and I say I am walking, talking history. I'll come back to that again. I must tell you a little more about myself so you can better understand what I can offer you. I was born of mixed parents, that is, my father was a Hindu and my mother a Christian. But neither of us, my sister and I, were given any religious indoctrination. But my parents and their generation were men and women of great integrity and morals. To this day, when I have to make a moral decision, I always refer back to what they would have done. The Lahore I grew up in was a most interesting city. It was a secular city in the best sense of the word. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs could mix happily and freely. We made friends because we found each other to be someone who gave us fun and friendship, with no thought of religious affiliation. They were just lovely people enriching our lives. All religious festivals were celebrated with equal freedom and mingling of communities. For us, brought up in a very Western atmosphere, Christmas and the New Year were magic. My father was a great believer in sport because it stimulated the mind. I was a tomboy and so encouraged by him. I loved athletics, swimming and playing golf. I will now tell you something which is sure to shock all of you. When I would go on to the running track for my sprint, I was a 100-meter sprinter, I would drop my trousers before a packed stadium to emerge in my running shorts. I tell you this so that you can picture the society of those days where such things could happen. When I joined GC for my BA, I met my future husband. He was a Muslim and a Pathan. My parents were all right with the Muslim part of him, but very perturbed at the Pathanness. Sorry if any Pathans are around, but I'm half of one now. As his family was very, and I mean very conservative, where strict parda was the norm for women. Finally they consented, and I'm sure with many forebodings. This is easily said, but at that time, that is 1946, when communal riots were raging in Lahore and Pakistan was a clear possibility. My decision can only be considered as foolhardy, but I made a go of it. It didn't take me long to settle into my new life. I was a feature of much interest. Never have these ladies seen an educated girl from the wicked outside world settle in so comfortably into their restricted environment. A word about my amazing mother-in-law. After much opposition, she finally consented to her precious son marrying this outsider. While I had the advantage of a liberal education, my mother-in-law had not. But she came to love me and appreciate me when she saw what education had made me. I am thrilled to know, after my good behavior, the fear of educating their girls began to gradually fade away, and they were now being sent to schools where their mothers would never have gone to. I spent my days in reading books on history, different religions, and of course plenty of classical novels. My husband also was an avid reader of history and loved reciting Ghalib and Iqbal during the long winter evenings. In 1978, when I became a widow at 52, I had behind me this rich store of understanding and sympathy. It became increasingly imperative to find a profession that would truthfully engage me. I applied to Bloomfield Hall. It had just started and had a good name as a progressive institution. My only references were my father, Professor G.D. Sondi, and my sister, Professor Urmila Sirajuddin. I was interviewed and employed as class 7 teacher with a grand salary of rupees 2,000 per month. I had hardly been at Bloomfield when Zareen, one of the founders of LACAS, who knew me as Auntie Sonnu, a name by which I have come generally to be known, asked me to join them. I protested. I could not leave my children. She promptly replied, I would have plenty more. And she was right. So began my love affair with LACAS. I have been here now for 25 years and seen it through tough times and great. I am told that the many students I have taught still remember me with affection and respect. What more would I ask for? I love my subject, history, so teach it almost as a personal experience. After I had been lecturing on German unification and referred to Bismarck, significant glances are exchanged, meaning, here she goes again about her beloved Bismarck. It is such a pleasure when I can relate to my students, even to a class of 24 rowdy teenagers as at LGS-JT. I worry and care for my children even after they have left. The love and understanding that I have given and received from these countless young men and women is what makes my life really worthwhile. I hope I will depart my existence before I cannot teach anymore. Soon after I began teaching at LACAS, one of the directors, Dure Ahmed, told me I was to take charge of debates. So very tentatively, I suggested to Zareen I would like to give a challenge cup in my father's name for a debates competition. So started the Sondi Challenge Debates Cup, which has from those hesitant beginnings become one of the most prestigious events in Lahore's debating circle. A word here I must correct. It's been said that I began the parliamentary style of debates. No, I did not. It was the doing of Raziuddin Sheikh, a remarkable man who put us onto the map and took us to all the international events to which now we regularly go. I only introduced it to LACAS, which was the first school to start this type of debate instead of those dull declamations. Anyway, because of this connection, Mr. Raziuddin Sheikh made me treasurer of the Pakistan Debating Society. When he resigned, I was made a president. That was a tough job, but very fulfilling. We not only held the Raziuddin Sheikh All-Pakistan Under-19 Championship, as well as the Under-17s, but invited teams from India to participate in university-style debates, as well as sending our team to very prestigious persons such as Khalid Ahmed and Salman Raja to participate in an exchange of ideas on the theme of Two Narratives, One History, hosted by Miranda House in Delhi. The parliamentary style of debates has become very popular in Pakistan. This year, more than 40 teams participated in the annual event. I am often asked, why debates? Because it opens their minds to worlds of knowledge across every discipline imaginable, but even more than that, it makes them think positively on topics they may otherwise not have been in sympathy with. This lessens intolerance, I hope, will last these young people all their life. We so desperately need to be tolerant. Its absence is destroying the very fabric of our lives and making us into unkind and unhappy people. Whereas tolerance makes life more full and exciting and creates bonds that know no frontiers. A few days back, I listened to Sir Kevin Robson, I think his name is, on TED. After listening to him, apart from being terrified to speak myself, I was totally enthralled by what he had to say on education. We teach to drill minds so that they can get A grades and move on to finding highly paid jobs. This is today's definition of success. But he said every child is creative, and education should be to liberate that creativity, not kill it. How right he is. Despite everything, so many of my students are playing guitars or drums or are singers. You heard one of them just now. Apart from being my nephew, he has also been my student. And when we were in Bloomfield, he was a terrible problem child and wouldn't work, and everyone was very concerned. And being his aunt, I felt even more concerned. So I asked him one day, I said, "What is it with you?" And there was Pink Floyd written all over on his desk. I said, "Who's this Pink Floyd?" And he gave me his songs to listen to. Then I understood. Anyway, this is wonderful that they play like this. It is giving freedom to the spirit in a world that is increasingly narrow-minded and intolerant. A world dedicated to making money and war. Filthy, dirty world, which we have to change. I will close with a short little speech I made at LGS-JT Debates Final. I want you to be proud of your country. You are its hope and future. Let not the wrongs done, and there are plenty by my generation, stop you. Love your land and lift your heads in joy at being alive when there is so much good and honest work for you to do. Thank you.